Welcome to Department Talk Bollocks. Widely inaccurate, probably offensive, definitely amateur. And this week, squirting our geeky audio juice all down your ears and probably a little bit on your face too, is me, Phil.
I'm General Coleman.
And I'm Scott. See how I didn't pause this time?
I know, yeah, you've done quite well.
I've got used to it.
Oh dear.
So, it's time. This episode is gonna be a little bit different to the last three, and we're gonna do a bit of a news desk. And
Where we just talk bollocks,
Yeah.
basically. Which is the whole idea of this web.
Yeah, of course. So we're gonna talk bollocks on a multitude of different subjects as opposed to one.
So when you say we're talking bollocks, we're talking about the bigger bollock, the smaller bollock. Mine hangs slightly to the left.
The hairy bollock.
That's the
Yes.
one.
Well, we are doing news in briefs in a bit, so we're all going to be sassing out on the pants, so we might get to see a few hairy bollocks.
So it's time for the news desk. So in the absence of a theme tune, I'll just try and come up with one on the spot. News desk, with the sex pests and the sex pests and the news desk, but no incest because that's wrong.
See, we're just hanging our heads in shame now. In fact, Scott is in a paralysis state, staring in disbelief.
It's right there
at
in the
Phil.
tagline. It's definitely amateur. And I'm just trying something new, all right? I just thought a theme tune. I was just saving you some work rather than cutting in a theme tune. I just thought I'd do it live.
Yay.
So,
Right. So, let's get started on the news.
If you start us off, Andrew.
Yes, we just want to talk about the new Doctor Who companion, Jenna Louise Coleman. Sexy as fuck, might I add. 25-year-old Jenna is from Blackpool. And the bit that I want to talk about is how are they going to resolve this her turning into a Dalek at the end of the first episode?
Yeah, we should say it was a big surprise because previously it had been announced. I can't remember whether it was officially announced by the BBC or it was the Mirror, but it had been suggested that the new companion, not called Oswin, called Clara, played by Jenna Louise Coleman, was going to appear in the Christmas special, and that would be her first appearance. And in a way, it made me smile because it was kind of meta-textual. It was almost breaking the fourth wall because the surprise after the opening credits that there was a new companion. That only works if you've read any press releases or you've been on the Doctor Who news page or you've seen it on Doctor Who magazine, because to the general public at large, they wouldn't recognise it.
No, they wouldn't.
And there was quite a few people sort of if you went on Twitter being like, is that her? Isn't that the new companion?
It's only people like us who perv over photographs of her that actually knew that was her, you know.
I'm just curious to see what she looks like. I wouldn't describe it as pervy.
We've got a nice celebrity desktop wallpaper up on the big screen here of very long legs and long
back in
boots.
her Emmerdale days. So it's going to be quite interesting because the way it was left, for a start, she's called Oswin and not Clara. She's not from present day Earth, so it's going to be quite interesting to see how it's resolved.
Yes, that's the bit that I'm really trying to figure out myself.
Are we talking wibbly wobbly timey wimey? Are we, talking about going to a point before she turned into that? Is the Doctor going to somehow change it? Is it not going to actually be Oswin, but some kind of...
Oh, suggesting that possibly it might be a great granddaughter or something like that. It's almost identical.
Yeah.
Or could it be
a twin sister?
Or could it be an alien taking on the form of Oswin because the Doctor happened to think she was pretty tasty? Yeah, take on the form of...
The thing is, though, that's only saw her as the Dalek, didn't he?
Yes.
So, yeah, pretty tasty.
He never actually saw her for who she actually was. He only ever saw the Dalek and her voice.
So maybe he did find it quite tasty then.
This is absolutely correct. So it's going to be quite interesting. I mean, as far as I know, there's been no other talk about the Daleks coming back, so would it be a Dalek story?
But that would make it even more interesting, taking into account basically, unless he actually apart from the name itself, unless the name triggers it off and it is Oswin, not Clara, it'd be more interesting if it turns out she's Clara. Who the hell is she? Because we've seen Oswin, player Oswin, and Doctor's got no idea who the hell she is.
Yes. So that's the first bit of news story that we've got. We want to know about Jenna.
Well played, Moffat.
Well, the next one that I want to talk about is the new Terry Pratchett novel, Dodger.
Terry Pratchett, though, is
Yeah,
fantastic.
you didn't even know it had come out, did you?
No, I hadn't. Snuff had not long since come out.
Yeah, it was about Christmas time, wasn't it? Because
So
I got it for my Christmas present, Snuff, which I did find was rather lackluster in the usual Discworld series. I'm a big fan of Terry Pratchett, and I've been for many years. And I just found it was such a terrible novel that I've not even finished it. I've actually still got it half read on my bedside table because even the characterizations of the main characters like Vimes were completely out of place with what's gone on before.
Oh.
But I've got high hopes about this Dodger because it's not the first time that he's stepped out of this world.
Yeah,
but it's the first time he's gone into this is actually gone into this nice Victorian London atmosphere. With a character that's very similar to the Dodger from Oliver Twist.
Yeah, I was reading about it after you mentioned it to me, and I thought this actually does sound like quite a nice novel that I would like to pick up as soon as it comes out and give it a try.
And it's out now, so
is it?
That's
even better.
That's our news. It's out now. But I saw it while I was in London, so unless London gets it the day before Manchester.
As somebody who's not really familiar with Terry Pratchett's output, I've never really read any. I think years ago I might have read Johnny and the Bomb, but I'm not really familiar with any of his output. What I was curious about, I did watch the documentary about his what is it he's got? It's
Alzheimer's.
His Alzheimer's. What's his output been like, sort of post?
He tends to with the Alzheimer's. He tends to have a lot based off his fans to keep him in check with a lot of the stories, so that basically fans will remind him of certain characters in the background and all that, so that he can continue writing from that point of view.
He's also said that his daughter currently is up to date with everything that he's writing so far, so when he gets to a stage where he can't write any further, she can actually take over.
That would be nice. That would be nice. If she's got the capability to.
She's actually doing a lot of the typing for him now, so he's doing a lot of the dictating, she's doing a lot of the
she's
typing.
got quite a good grasp of it.
Really
that would be nice.
So we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. I mean, I don't think that his novels have gone too downhill about since his Alzheimer's. It's only really Snuff that I found was a terrible novel, but he's done a few more from the one that's being turned into a Sky One new drama soon, which is the one about the football, which I can't remember the bloody title of.
The last time I looked under it was
Unseen Academicals.
Yes, then we are both thinking the same one.
And also the one before it, which was a follow-on to my mind's gone really terrible today. I don't know what it is. But anyway, yeah, his last few novels have been quite good. It's just that Snuff's really fell by the wayside a little bit. A lot of people like Snuff. I just found it was a bit lacklustre in comparison to his earlier work. But I do have high hopes for Dodger. So we'll have to wait and see.
So what have we got next? Scott, you wanted to talk about Perception.
Yes, a new TV series that's about to start soon. I think it is this month, isn't it? Or is it next month? It begins on Watch, Perception, with Eric McCormack and Rachel Lee Cook.
Yes, it's already aired in the US. The first 9 episodes, which constitute the first season. It's a bit of an odd episode order because the first season is 9 episodes, and the second season's commissioned is 13, which will make 22, which will be like a full length regular season in television, so not quite sure what's going on there. But yeah, it stars Rachel Lee Cook, who I've not seen for quite a long time.
Josie and the Pussycats would be the last one I've seen her in.
She's all that, but she's still got it. But it's a really clever premise, essentially, like this neuroscientist who uses his outlook to help the federal government solve complex criminal cases,
as it says right there on the page that we're reading from.
It's like that's the
thing is though, it does sound quite similar to a lot of other things. Yeah, I mean, Millennium was one that was quite similar, wasn't it? Where he used his unique abilities to help the government solve murder cases and things like that.
It's a lovely, typical storyline that has been used quite a lot. You've got Monk, the Mentalist. Top of my head, bloody hell. I can't think of any more at the moment. I had a long list just straight there, but Monk and the Mentalist are two great examples. Life is another where you've got Daniel Lewis. Damien Lewis, that's it, 'cause I'm thinking of Daniel Day-Lewis. Damien Lewis, who spent 15 years in prisons, released, and he goes back to working with the police department.
What I think is kind of, or what I like, it rests on the lead actor, and what in this series the main conceit is that he has all these different voices and sees all these different people.
Best way of describing it is John Nash, Beautiful Mind. Based on the true story, even though the film A Beautiful Mind, John Nash suffered from paranoid schizophrenia and could see people, and same as Dr. Daniel Pearce, that Eric McCormack plays, he understands that they're not actually there, but they help him to somehow, in a way, collect the subconscious workings of how he's actually working things out to help him solve the
in the first episode, he dismisses someone and dismisses one of these voices he was hearing, and then he kind of realises that actually it's his subconscious helping him figure out the case. It's one of those, it rests in the hands of the actor, and Eric McCormack it turns in a really good performance.
Especially coming from Will and Grace, Free Enterprise as well. But overall, a different-esque type performance, and it's nice seeing him playing something else for a change.
Yeah, and what I love and it uses like classical music really brilliantly, because his way of blocking out the voices is he puts on his Walkman. Because for some reason he refuses to have an iPod, so he's got a Walkman with a tape, and he'll like listen to this classical music, and he'll start sort of conducting it. And it's because if he takes his headphones off, he knows that he'll probably start hearing people or whatever, and he'd rather people think he's he's eccentric rather than genuinely nuts.
Yes.
What I also like about it is the idea that it's mental illness used positively, and there's a really nice end monologue where he talks about trying to help return somebody to normalcy, but then is what their illness actually what makes them unique, and that's a nice sort of recurring theme in the 2 episodes that I've seen so far.
Well, I'll certainly check it out. I've not seen anything of it yet. This is first I've heard, so I'll certainly have a look into it now you've mentioned it. Yes. There's a couple of TV series which are going to be starting very soon in the United States. One of them is the next series of Fringe, Series 5. Really looking forward to this. Will we see a return of William Bell, as played by Leonard Nimoy? The focus of the last series, it is the 5th and final series, will be on the observers and what occurs in 2036. So hopefully it'll be a huge payoff for the fans who've stuck with it. But there's a downside to the new series. It's only going to be 13 episodes.
I've not actually watched any of Fringe. However,
shame on you.
I know. But I am familiar, and perhaps that might be my new series when I've finally finished Alias, because I've only just started watching that, and I've started to notice quite a few J.J. Abrams tropes in there, stuff that is recurring. Like in the first series of Alias, there's a weapon which is essentially like a big red ball, and it kind of looks like the red antimatter thing from Star Trek. In the pilot episode, there's a scene where an agent and Sidney Bristow and a CIA agent meet in a convenience store, and they're talking to each other over the shelf, pretending that they're not. They're just looking at a can of beans or something like that while they talk to each other. And he uses that exact same scene in Mission Impossible 3. Yeah. And there's also, as Scott also noticed, something which kind of later he picks up on more on in Fringe, which is a shady part of the CIA, which looks into kind of supernatural.
Yeah, the Fringe division.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, the funniest thing about Fringe is it started off as very close version of the X-Files. There was very little difference between the two series, but Fringe developed from the second series onwards into its own mythology, and that's what's made it stand out, completely different to X-Files. So it is worth picking up on and start watching. But
And that evolution, that's you can't help but feeling, and this is something that's kind of a problem with the modern TV society. It's only names like J.J. Abrams, hitmakers, that actually get the ability to take that kind of journey with the series and for it to evolve and to take on its own life.
Yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate that it has been cancelled, but the good side to it is they were allowed this final season to wrap it up. Otherwise, it would have ended on one of those usual cliffhangers that would never be resolved. So this is, I'm really looking forward to the new series. Hopefully, it's out next month, as far as I can remember. The next one, The Walking Dead, Series 3. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up.
I'm looking forward to Series 3 after the end of Series 2 with the finale.
I mean, I found Series 2 was very drawn out, very long. There wasn't as much action went on as what happened in the first series. But they're saying that it's going to be changing for this third series. It's going to be back to balls to the wall action and with the introduction of some fantastic new characters, including Merle Dixon's coming back, and
yes,
the one
this
that
is
was
what
left
I was
on the roof
reading about this a while back.
First few episodes, yeah, it was. It's just fantastic to see him back, and also fantastic English actor David Morris is back. He's playing the bad guy of the series, the governor.
Yes.
It's one to look forward to, and also the introduction of the new character of that hooded figure that saved Andrea at the end of series 2.
This is what got me all rattled up, thinking, what's this about?
I know, it was such a great cliffhanger to end on that I'm just really looking forward to the new series.
Yeah, going back to what you were saying about the expectancy of the first series over the second, I totally agree with that. What was nice about the first series was, and I'm not a big zombie fan. I despise them beyond belief, and anyone who says to me that 28 Days Later was a zombie flick, I get really angry about that. But it's the typical storyline, basically how many times can you see a zombie film? You're trapped in one location, you've got to survive. It's the cliched story. And what was nice about Walking Dead, it brought characterization, development of relationships and people, rather than basically we've got to survive the night or a week or a day, or whatever it is. And it was nice that basically we've started going on a journey with these characters. But what was nice about it was that each individual episodes of the first season felt like a different location from what I've seen in zombie films, which was nice. But then the second season conveyed a lot of itself, episode for episode, on the farm, which dragged on quite a bit.
Too long,
and it did.
But hopefully that'll be resolved a little bit better in the third series. They'll pick up pace. They have said that they're going to try and make it more into the way that the first series was done, where it'll be more action orientated, more locations. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What about you, Phil? Have you been watching The Walking Dead at all?
No.
Oh, and
for once, he's actually kept quiet.
I know. And you probably will on the next one as well. I'm looking forward to the new series of American Horror Story.
Oh, unfortunately, I'm not that far behind Phil, unfortunately, because I've only seen the pilot.
Well, the first series was quite terrible, I must admit. It was supposed to have been this controversial TV series where possibly the most controversial thing that happened was a man appeared in a rubber suit. Woo. There was very little horror, very little scares in it. But hopefully the second series will pick up, because you see, sometimes when you set stories in the past, it tends to be a little bit more creepier, and they're setting it in an actual asylum, a mental hospital next time, and it's an asylum for the criminally insane in 1964. So hopefully, I've got hopes that this series will pick up in the second series.
Is it going to be like
better.
Kind of like House on the Haunted Hill,
that's what I'm hoping for.
Or a slight bit of, even though it's Kingdom Hospital is in a hospital,
yeah,
not a mental asylum. But
whatever the case, it's going to be better than the shitty British Bedlam. It's got to be. I mean, that is terrible. Sorry.
I'm looking forward to maybe skipping the first season and trying watching it from the second. If it's going to be completely different.
Oh, is that what your review? Because Bedlam wasn't on terrestrial, was it?
It was on one of the Sky channels. I can't remember which one, but I think the un-highlight, as in the anti-highlight of Bedlam, was the fact that Will Young was in it.
Right.
And he can't act.
Because I've heard mixed, because he was in Mrs. Henderson Presents, a movie, but it wasn't a role that particularly challenged him. And I know similarly,
what will challenge him?
Similarly, you know, he's had very good write-ups in Chicago, but I suppose that is down to the fact that it isn't something, you know, it's something that kind of sits, you know, within his ballpark, and I guess that's the thing. But I've not seen that, so you wouldn't recommend
I'd recommend watching Bedlam just for the fact that it is so terrible. Just watch it. I mean, apparently the second series has just started very recently, and it's supposedly an improvement on the first one. I don't know. I've not watched it, but
Lacey Turner, who was Stacey Slater in EastEnders, and then she was in really good in the third series of Being Human. So,
right. Okay. So it might be worth watching the second series just to see what it's about. Apparently, it's new characters that are in it anyway, but we'll just have to wait and see. So that's my news for the new TV series that are coming out very soon. They'll be shown in America soon. I don't know about over here. We'll have to wait and see.
So, have you got anything to add, Scott, for the news desk?
I'm looking forward to seeing the new US remake of Sherlock Elementary. At the moment, I'm a big fan of Sherlock, the Sherlock Holmes films, as well as the TV series by Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss. I'm looking forward to the third season actually when it comes out in January. What's so exciting is how season 2 ended with the Right Back Falls, which if anyone knows the books, it's the one entitled The Final Problem in the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. And what was interesting about that is that Conan Doyle, when originally writing it, that was it. Basically, Sherlock Holmes was dead, Moriarty dead, and he was never going to bring him back. But
it was through public pressure at the time that he had to bring him back.
It was
the newspapers wanted it, the public wanted it, so.
And I think he did it so well because he came back with, I think it was Hound of the Baskervilles, which was set previous to those stories. But then they came back with his next set of novellas. Which it didn't really explain. It just came back, wasn't it?
No, they did explain it. Yeah, it was. They didn't 100% explain how he survived the fall. But what they did do is they reintroduced him to Watson. As he was in his usual disguise, Sherlock Holmes disguise, as a bookseller, and he was bothering Watson as Watson was coming out of one of his lectures that he was teaching at the time, and he didn't realise that it was Sherlock at first, and it was only later on that he started to realise who he was. So they did briefly explain, but it wasn't fully explained how he survived the fall.
Well, this is what I'm looking at. Did you watch the second season where he fell off the edge of the building?
I've only watched it briefly, unfortunately. I've got them at home ready for watching, but I've just not had a chance to watch them.
What is really nice, basically, is a lot of people. Some people were shocked. A lot of people were like, "Oh, well, he must be dead," because the way it looks, the way basically you see Sherlock Holmes' body being taken away by the paramedics, you think, well, how the hell is he going to survive this? But at the very end of season 2, basically, we see him stood hidden behind a tree whilst the landlady, I can't remember her name at the moment, Mrs. Hudson, and Watson basically both stood near the grave, and he just stood back there, and you're like, how the hell did he survive that?
Well, we'd like to find out in the next series,
which is January, I think, if I remember correctly. But as for the US remake, what is really nice about it is, and this is what I'm looking forward to seeing, despite the fact that they've now got Lucy Liu playing Joan Watson, is the fact that they've gone back to Sherlock Holmes being an opiate addict.
Yeah.
And he's just come out of rehab, and his dad has paid for Joan Watson a carer to look after Sherlock Holmes. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how that comes out and works.
They did actually work that in quite a bit into the original Granada TV series of Sherlock Holmes. The fact that he was an addict, and he was quite strong at the time.
Was that
the Jeremy Brett version?
Right. Yeah.
I
think they showed it, didn't they? Within the first episode, he puts the syringe. You see the syringe in the drawer, and he pushes it to one side.
They do follow it up in a few future ones as well, where he's basically away at a beach, on holiday, and it's the same thing with the syringe again, pushing it into the drawer. So you do know that he's an addict, and and what's as they're
I
watching.
think if I remember correctly, basically because kids wanted to actually watch Sherlock Holmes, wasn't that basically the reason for him to show that scene? Basically, because obviously they didn't want him to play an addict, so they showed him giving up quite early on.
Yeah, but at least they did that. At least they did. They did show that he was like that. I mean, I was very, very lucky many years ago to have met Jeremy Brett in his last years, because he did die. Well, he fell seriously ill during the filming of the last series of Sherlock anyway, and I think it was the series before I'd met him outside Granada TV, and it was one of those moments where neither of us had any paper, neither of us had any pens, so I couldn't get an autograph of him, which was a bit of a shame really, but it was nice to have met him, before he passed away. Hopefully the new series, both the modern Sherlock and the one that they're doing in America, will continue to improve the legacy of Sherlock Holmes, which is, such a fantastic series of books, and it's been produced on film and TV so many times in many different ways, including Tom Baker. Tom Baker played him in a Hound of the Baskervilles at one point.
Oh God, yeah. I forgot about that.
And just the legacy of Sherlock Holmes, it's just fantastic that people have still got an interest in that and want to continue watching new things based around it, even retelling of old stories set in modern day.
Oh, well, did you ever see I know Phil's sat here whilst we're barking away. Did you ever see the American cartoon Sherlock Holmes in the 21st Century?
Oh, no, I didn't. Was it bad?
It was. It was basically after the right back falls, basically they get frozen in time. Well, get frozen, should I say, not frozen in time, and they are cryogenically defrosted. Think Demolition Man. Professor Moriarty's escaped, so they must
so it's
bring
Wesley
back
Snipes and Sylvester Stallone.
Basically, yes. And it was absolutely. If I remember, Carrie Ewells, who does Robin Hood Men in Tights, voiced Sherlock Holmes.
Oh dear.
What I find quite interesting about the US remake is it's kind of, or it's not a US remake of the BBC format, because obviously it's Conan Doyle created Sherlock Holmes, but the BBC did come up with this format with a present day set Sherlock Holmes.
Just using existing stories as the
premise, using existing stories as the premise. The BBC were approached by an American network, I forget which one this is on, to actually adapt their format, and they refused the Stephen Moffat, Mark Gatiss format, and they refused. But the Americans have done it anyway, so this Elementary isn't a remake of Sherlock, but it really is. And what's even more fascinating, we can say that because we don't represent either party, so we're not going to get sued. But essentially, that's what it is. They saw what we got, saw the ratings it was getting. Can we have one of those? What's even more fascinating, and I really do wonder what the friendship and the dynamic between the two men is like. Johnny Lee Miller in the US version and Benedict Cumberbatch in the UK version both starred in Frankenstein, the amazing National Theatre production, where they rotated the roles of the creature and Frankenstein. So it's like these two are actually tied. They won an Olivier Award when, on stage, went up to collect an award for both of them, where they both won because they were rotating roles. So they are good friends and they've worked, quite closely. So it's really interesting to imagine what the dynamic is. I mean, maybe, Benedict Cumberbatch is just like, well, a job's a job. Take it, Johnny. It's fine. I don't mind. I think it's silly, but so I'd be really fascinated about that kind of dynamic and how that's come up. And I also think it's going to be a mistake with the American one. Is it going to be like a 22 episode season or something like that, or at least 13?
I mean, if it is, then that'll be a bit too much. I think maybe it's a half series, because that's what the Americans are tending to do these days.
Even so, it's going to be hard to sort of sustain. I don't know what the episode order is, but I imagine for a US series it's going to be hard to sustain it that long.
I mean, the only way they could sustain it, and I'm really hoping this, is we'll get to see Lisa Loon and Nick as quite a few episodes. That'll certainly sustain my interest in the
level
series.
of mystery. Having, but we shall see.
No, there's nothing on it,
nothing
there?
No,
it's just explaining the first few
but
episodes.
the episodes are
There you are, 13 episodes.
Yeah,
It'll be
13
so, yeah.
13 43-minute episodes. So it'll be interesting to see whether it can be sustained over that length and having, more of a writer's room scenario rather than an intimate.
It'd be more interesting because I know what the Americans are like, if they're actually going to keep any of the stories or whether they're just going to kind of create their own. You know what they're like for doing that sort of thing.
They did that with Shameless, didn't they? When they did the remake
did.
of Shameless, they started off doing complete copies of the English episodes, and then they started to move away into their own, which actually was the most interesting part of the. Of the American
they did the same
Shameless.
with The Office in a sense.
Yeah.
But they still kept some bits into it. Sorry.
But if we we'll just hold off on US remakes because that will be coming back with a vengeance later on in the episode.
Oh, yes.
We'll just kind of continue on the news desk.
Well,
if there's anything...
next bit of news, we've got some films coming out very soon. One of them is a fantastic film called Pacific Rim. There are no trailers online whatsoever at the moment. Anything that you YouTube will end up being fan-made trailers, which are just a waste of time watching. But it's directed by Del Toro, who's one of my favourite directors, and I think Scott likes him as well.
Yeah, Pan's Labyrinth would be one of my favourites. Hellboy, even though I still enjoyed Hellboy 2 for some of those graphic sequences during the storytells. But Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth, sticks out there.
I mean, apparently this Pacific Rim is going to be a complete film homage to the Japanese monster films. I'll read a little bit out here that I found out online, which is very little at the moment. When legions of monstrous creatures known as the kaiju start rising from the sea, a war began that would take millions of lives and consume humanity's resources for years on end. To combat the giant kaiju, a special type of weapon was devised. Massive robots called Jaegers, which are controlled simultaneously by two pilots whose mind are locked in a neural bridge. Sounds a little bit like Gundam, really, doesn't it? Or Evangelion. But apparently on the verge of defeat, the forces defending mankind have no choice but to turn to two unlikely heroes, a washed-up former pilot and an untested trainee. Apparently it's a Japanese actress that's playing the trainee. So they are actually using Japanese actresses, which always, the fact that they're doing a homage to Japanese monster films is a really good tie-in, that they're willing to use people, actors and actresses from Japan in this. So it's something that I'm really looking forward to. The release date keeps getting moved though. At the moment it's July the 12th, 2013. But it has been moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to wait and see.
That's keeping out for the next summer blockbuster.
Yeah. That's going to be a busy...
and Ron Perlman's in it as well. I forgot to mention that, who Del Toro really likes to use in his films.
Yeah, that's going to be a busy summer, isn't it? Because what else is out next summer? I think Star Trek...
Iron Man 3, I think, is next year as well.
3 is that at the summer? And I can't remember when Man of Steel's slated. I think that's summer 2013 as well.
Right. So it's going to be quite a busy summer by the sounds of it.
As it always is, but it'll to sort of take on. It'll almost be quite similar to this year, really, where we had sort of a DC superhero and Prometheus.
Yeah.
And then next year it'll be another DC superhero and Pacific Rim, and you keep seeing it sort of repeat.
Have we got time to just mention about Prometheus? I mean, what our thoughts are on the film?
I've still not seen it, but I'm not a big Alien fan as it is, and I
see?
can tell you a few reasons why. But
I am a fan of the Alien series, and I mean, I did go to watch Prometheus with an open mind, and I actually came away from the cinema with it. I quite enjoyed it. It was quite a fun movie. It wasn't quite as in depth as it could have been, and it certainly wasn't as good as Alien was. But it really did open my mind to new ideas, and I'm hoping that they are planning on talking of a sequel. I think that's why I wanted to mention a little bit more about Prometheus, that there is a sequel in talks. So we'll just have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, that'll be. I mean, I've not actually seen it either, so it'll be it'll be interesting to see whether the sequel delivers what people have been expecting. I mean, it's a difficult balance, because with any any prequel or something that's kind of tied to a continuity, because you want to see it sort of paid off, but on the other hand, you've got to tell a good story in its own right. So
well, apparently Ridley Scott's got a part in the sequel. He's directing the sequel as well. A lot of people hated Prometheus. It's not, it's quite popular knowledge that they hated it. As a fan of Ridley Scott's work, it wasn't as strong as some of his things, some of the films that he's done before, like Blade Runner, Alien, but it certainly was a fantastic, enjoyable, action-packed film.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another bit of news that there is a sequel to Prometheus.
Anything else?
Yes, we've. Do you want me to mention about Transformers 4?
We'll come to that in a moment. So
Okay.
we'll talk about that in a little bit more depth very shortly. So that's the end of the news desk. The news desk with the sex pests, but no incest. Yeah, do.
Oh,
We're working
God.
on that. We're working on it.
Well, hopefully not with Phil doing it.
It's a work in progress.
I'll whip something up for next time.
It's a work in progress.
I'll certainly think of someone to whip up for next time anyway.
So, what I wanted to talk about, and this is kind of becomes more of a general debate, is they've announced, the Sci-Fi Channel has announced that Blake 7, they've been trying to get Blake 7 off the ground. If people aren't familiar, for many years. If people aren't familiar with it, it's a television series that was created by Terry Nation, who created the Daleks.
Didn't Chris Boucher write a lot of episodes as well for Blake 7?
Yes, he was the script editor
Yeah.
on the first, on all 4 series, and he certainly became the lead writer in the 4th series when Terry Nation actually had nothing to do with it in the 4th series. He wasn't available to write it.
Right.
He'd gone to America at that point. In fact, I'm not quite sure on the mechanics of it, but I think it wasn't even expected a 4th series.
Yeah,
because
I don't think
they destroyed the Liberator set, which was the main ship. They destroyed that completely at the end of the 3rd series, and then the 4th series they get Scorpio, which is a more basic cargo ship, and it's also a more basic set as well, and you feel that it's something they've kind of knocked together very quickly. Although there's an amazing model shot every time it takes off. But I won't go into the ins and outs of the series. What I will say is that I'm curious about it because the BBC didn't own the rights to the premise. It was Terry Nation. Terry Nation's estate sold it to a company who called themselves B7 Media. And they've been trying for some time. They tried some radio drama, which are available for a while on the Sci-Fi Channel website in 5-minute parts, and hoped that might get people excited. They got Colin Salmon, who playing Avon, who was he was M's chief of staff in the black guy who was M's chief of staff in the Bond movies. So they've been trying for a while to get it off the ground. And now the announcement comes, I'm reading a report on the Guardian website here, that they're hoping to, Martin Campbell, who is a British director, but is, with American money, is hoping to produce a series made in America for the Sci-Fi Channel, which is interesting.
It's interesting. I'm not really 100% sure about it, though. I mean, sometimes I like how the Americans remake series into their own, into their style and that. But with Blake 7, which is a quintessentially British series, in the same vein as Doctor Who, I don't know how it's going to.
Well, there would be a school of thought there because nobody's associated to an organisation. That tends to be the thing. They are essentially the Dirty Dozen in space. It's very kind of anti-establishment.
Well, I would like to see an English version rather than an American version.
Oh, me too, definitely. But I don't know whether the premise. I think it can translate to the US if done right. I mean, I'm not the first person to point to it, but the Battlestar Galactica remake, if it was something in that kind of vein, something that took itself very seriously,
very dark and
then it could potentially work. And I know it's taken so long. And if this is the only way for it to happen, then,
I just wish that a lot more companies here in England would, take up the stick and actually produce a lot more, because they've realised how popular that science fiction can be with bringing Doctor Who back.
Yeah.
The fact that the British companies, including the BBC, the lack of willingness to be able to do more, and I think that's a shame sometimes, because I think that Blake 7 would be such an ideal TV series to bring back
Well,
here.
Blake 7 is in many ways exactly like The Prisoner, because The Prisoner was lined up for a Sky remake. In fact, Christopher Eccleston was in the frame to play number 6 for a Sky production.
Is that the northern version of The Prisoner?
Yeah, I'm not a number. I'm a fucking free man. You bastards.
Not that Chris Eccleston sounds like that. I did actually meet him on the street in Manchester when he was filming that new series that he was doing. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a film noir series that was done around the streets of Manchester. And he actually walked past me, and I was looking up to say hi, Chris, and he said, "Hi, you all right?" and walked past her. And I was actually quite a proud moment to have met Chris in Manchester on the street. But anyway, yeah, carry on.
It's exactly the same because Blake 7 was lined up for Sky as well. It's like they've been looking for a sci-fi property for some time, and it just always seems to fall through at the last minute. You know, somebody new takes over as the head of the channel. It's reconsidered. And again, both like The Prisoner, this remake is going to America. So we'll see how it turns out. But it's an interesting thing. I thought we'd just talk for a moment about remaking British television.
I want to point out men behaving badly when Rob Schneider appeared in the American remake, and it was just you might as well just given it the same title, but it was completely different.
Right.
You know, it's like calling the Italian Job, and then you got the Italian Job, the LA Heist. It's supposed to be a remake. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
It's got similar plot lines, and you've got the red, the white, and the blue car. Other than that,
I just find remakes sometimes can be quite pointless. I mean, I can understand for a TV series that's not been on for a very long time that they want to reboot it or reimagine it. But I can never understand why this culture that's in America at the moment of constantly wanting to remake things. Is it not good enough that we've got a British version that they want to make an American version?
I think it is. I would put this down purely down. I was reading an article about remakes, basically, and I don't want to say the Americans are as thick as pig shit, but unfortunately, the Brits seem to produce and have, in the sense of humour, of satire, especially with lower class, middle class, and high class societies. They just don't seem to get that understanding. So I think they're remaking it not because, well, they can try and maybe dub it like they do with foreign language based stuff.
It's like they did with Shameless. I mean, the British version just did not translate it
exactly,
so they remade it for their own image. And I'm glad that they have chosen to move away from the original stories, but I just feel that remakes, sequels, this constant rehash that's coming out of America at the moment is starting to get a little bit dull and boring. They just don't seem to have the imagination. Well, they do have the imagination to come up with new things, but it seems to only be on channels like HBO. Yeah. HBO are the only channel at the moment that are producing original, new, interesting material.
I remember back in the days of HBO and the Tales from the Crypt series.
I was going to say very similar to what you said with Shameless. The US did a version of Queer as Folk for the Showtime network, and the first 5-6 episodes were incredibly lackluster because they were trying to adapt Russell T Davies' script, very specific moments as well, which just don't work because they don't transfer to, because instead of Canal Street, it was Liberty Avenue in Pennsylvania, and it just didn't. I don't even know if that really exists or not, and it didn't work. But then when they started to sort of move away and tell their own stories, and also because it was only really focused on 3 characters in the British Queer as Folk, and then there were 2 others which were kind of comedic characters but didn't have much depth. They expanded those roles, the supporting cast, because obviously they got more episodes to fill, and then when they started telling their own stories, suddenly things started taking off, and I think that's something which is pretty telling, really, because people should be coming up with
original ideas,
because it doesn't work. Having said that, I am curious about the Blake 7 remake because I do think it's a great premise, and I do think it was cut down in its prime, and I would like to see that series come back. I would prefer it with a British voice because I think it could be a really nice feather in the cap. You could have Doctor Who, you could have Blake Seven, you could even have crossovers, and it would just be a nice thing because to do a spaceship drama in the UK, but you can't have everything. Just before we move on to another subject, I've just found on Wikipedia a list of UK shows which have been remade by the US. Absolutely fabulous. Agony, Airline, The Ali G Show, Antiques Roadshow, Are You Being Served, As If, Balls of Steel, Ballykiss Angel, Being Human, Birds of a Feather, Blackpool, Brat Camp, Britain's Got Talent, Cash Cab, Cash in the Attic, CD UK, Celebrity Fit Club, Changing Rooms, Cold Feet, Cracker, Coupling, Dad's Army, Dancing on Ice, Dear John, Distraction, Dog Eat Dog, Don't Forget Your Toothbrush, Dragons on 11 Hour, Faking Out. Yeah, you get the point.
I know Steps and Son was remade.
Yes, it was.
It was called Stamford and Son.
That was it. Stamford and Son.
That's a theme tune written by the legendary Quincy Jones.
Lovely.
So we'll move on.
Yes. Are we moving on to Transformers now?
If we must.
Oh dear God! I mean, really, the films have been quite terrible. But a little bit of news about the Transformers 4 apparently. Speaking at the drearily titled UBS Best of America 2012 conference, Hasbro CEO Brian Goldner admitted in a moment of brutal honesty that the decision to kick off Transformers 4 with a whole new range of robots was motivated by poor merchandise sales for the last movie of the franchise. Well, it was a fucking poor movie as it was, so no wonder the sales were bad.
Pretty decent box office, didn't it? Unfortunately.
Yeah, but it was terrible. I mean, it got panned so many times.
Oh yeah, but so did the other two, but it didn't really make a difference.
The best way I can describe the Transformers films, because I quite like the Transformers.
Yeah, I do as well. I mean, I like the original,
Yeah.
the original robot designs. I like the original cartoon series. I like the original movie, the cartoon movie with Leonard Nimoy playing Unicron, and I thought Orson Welles was in it as well, and it was Leonard Nimoy. Sorry, he did Galvatron, wasn't it? I can't remember.
But the best way I can describe Michael Bay's poor attempt at reconfiguring it is, at the end of the day, all he's done is basically it's flashy, great CGI, basically, beautiful kids on the block, basically.
Megan Fox's arse many times.
But you just got to say to yourself, basically, in a realistic world, where are the norms? Where are the people that basically have the distinguishing features that stand out that most kids would get bullied for?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, and this is where the Transformers new movies came from, was essentially from a car advert. They shown that car advert, the transforming robot,
yes, I do.
And that's why they said, we have now got the technology to be able to reimagine the Transformers movies for the big screen using this technology. And what did they do? They turned characters that were so recognisable by even people that hadn't watched early cartoons. They knew what Optimus Prime looked like. They knew what Megatron looked like.
Did we? I didn't. I've never seen the Transformers.
So you don't remember the big red truck?
Wow, that is hard to believe. Even I do remember that.
I mean, I vaguely...
Even though I was a Transformers fan, I wouldn't call myself an avid one.
Yeah.
Wasn't watching it every week. You know, if it came on TV, it was on.
You'd recognise the characters,
but I knew all the characters.
You'd recognise the characters, and the new movie just completely took away from that, and it was a terrible. And basically, it was a porn film without porn.
What I thought was interesting.
I would more describe it as a decorative cape with a hollow centre and no stripper popping out. Disappointing yet beautifully made, or beautiful looking, should I say?
What I thought was surprising. Well, the problem being when you're doing the Transformers, a live action movie, is you don't want to make a movie with robots. You don't want to make a movie just solely with robots. You want some kind of human interest element. So I understand.
Real Steel did this.
So I understand. You make a movie with, you create the Shia LaBeouf.
But the thing is, though,
character, and what surprises me though is actually they couldn't be any more soulless and hollow, and they might as well have just made a movie with all robots and no human aspect whatsoever.
But the thing is, though, if you look back on you obviously don't, but if you look back on the original series, there was the human characters in there that were originated from the very first comic strip from the, obviously they never did them in the toy line, but they did it in the comic strip. And the character of Spike, or Bud, that I think he was changed into, depending on whether it was the English or American version, I can't remember, was always there. And considering that the character had a backstory, a life outside of the robot universe that he was living in, the fact that the movies didn't even look at that original history and just created, like you say, this soulless character, but on a figure that they could, on a character that they could have brought in a lot more to, and it was quite poor realization.
But talking of something from my childhood, which is supposedly being remade and it's being produced by Michael Bay, I think it's been halted, thank God. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is supposed to be being produced by.
No, I have heard about that. Yes.
By Michael Bay, and apparently they're now aliens. They're not. It's not O's.
Oh no! You see, that's completely taken away from the original idea, and I can never understand why they would do that. Yeah. What is the point in having aliens invading Earth and calling them the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when there's obvious backstory already there for them?
Yeah. So apparently it's not coming out till 2014, but Michael Bay is involved as a producer.
Well, I'm certainly not looking forward to
help
that.
us. And there are very few, people that inspire that much hatred and vitriol, but I'm afraid Michael Bay, I just find him one of the most sexist, misogynist, homophobic, racist directors going. And it's just those things of like, and it really annoys me when people say, well, switch your brain off, leave your brain at the door, it's just a bit of fun. No, we get the movies we deserve, and we should expect more, and there are plenty of examples of good, strong action movies which are also intelligent. Go on, Scott.
I'm not gonna lie. When you said that, shut your brain off. There are some films that I go in quite adamantly with my brain turned on, but then when you get a crappy ass film like The Toxic Avenger, or as we were talking about earlier, Bad Boys 2, I can just switch my brain off and just enjoy it for what it is.
Bad Boys 2.
Unfortunately, in some cases, when it comes to Michael Bay films, even though you shut your brain off, you actually end up falling asleep halfway through it. Apart from the noise,
did that with Transformers.
Bang.
It's the fetishization as well of explosions in the Michael Bay movies, and I mean, Bad Boys 2 is just the worst.
Oh yeah,
it's the Haitian.
Great example of Michael Bay.
The depiction of Haitians in it is awful and vile and racist. And then there's that horrible moment where Will Smith and Martin Lawrence has been accidentally shot in the ass by Will Smith's character, and they're sitting in a TV store and there's a mic on them, but they don't realise there's a mic on them, and the way he's talking is like he's just had anal sex with Will Smith. It's like, you really hurt me when you put it in the ass like that, and actually it's because he's been shot in the ass, and it's really, really homophobic and just awful. And I have got a pretty good tolerance for that kind of thing. I don't always kind of leap on it like a lefty liberal, but in that instance, it's just a horrible, horrible movie, and it should be condemned. It would be in my room 101.
And the funniest thing about it, I mean, Michael Bay came from directing music videos. That was his original thing, but he went straight from really doing those sort of videos into doing like a full-on action film, and I think it was the first Bad Boys film.
Yeah, it was.
Was it
1995?
Right.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, the 90s. A lot of directors that were coming out of the 90s were coming from that music video scene, which was quick, flashy, loud images and sound.
And
sometimes,
and sometimes you do get an interesting sensibility. Like, wasn't Spike Jonze from a music video background?
That would not surprise me after Do That Right Thing.
No. That's
Spike Lee.
That's Spike Lee.
You're thinking of Spike. I call him Spike Yons.
We're not talking about Spike Lee, one of the most essential movie directors from Black New York, who produced some fantastic, amazing, quality films of the day. No, we're not talking about him.
Oh.
Sorry.
Spike Jonze, isn't that the... didn't he do Adaptation and... being John Malkovich.
Yeah,
Yeah, he did,
that's,
yeah.
So that's
Oh well, then I'm not going to knock him.
No,
They
no,
were
no.
two fantastic films.
that's the point I was That's the point I was making. Sometimes from that background, you do get.
Yeah, you do.
It says he come. Yeah, he came from music.
So from every Spike Jones though, you end up with a Michael Bay.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, and the biggest unfortunate thing is everybody looks at Michael Bay as being the next big thing, and the people who actually go to watch these movies, like the true geeks, sci-fi nerds, all this and the other, all look at him with distaste.
Yeah.
And it's like, we want someone better to produce the films that we want to watch. But unfortunately, yeah.
What I was going to say was, he views us with similar contempt.
Yes,
he's like, get the fuck out. You don't matter. Your dollar doesn't matter. You're the core fan base that was there before I took on this movie. That doesn't matter because, I'm going to make millions out of this movie, and it's that kind of attitude, and that's why it still works.
This is the thing. I mean, I'll quote what he was saying about the new Transformers movie. Apparently, originally he said that it was going to be a reboot, which would have been absolutely ridiculous considering that they'd already had 3 movies under the belt. But then he's now backpedaling by saying it's not a reboot. That's maybe the wrong word. I don't want to say reboot because then people think that we're doing a Spider-Man and starting from the beginning. We're not. We're taking the story that you've seen, the story we've told in 3 movies already, and we're taking it in a new direction. So, I mean, that's just shallow talk to me.
It's marketing rhetoric.
That's quite poor to say that towards an audience, especially when the first 3 have already been heavily poor, and you're saying, right, we're going off in a different direction.
Yeah.
It's not a reboot.
It's a reboot, but then it's not a reboot.
Yeah. Revamped it.
And the funniest thing is he's poor. He said at the bottom, he said that one of the writers has been thinking about stuff, and we're getting together next week to see what we've got and see if it gels. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll see what gel. Why don't you contact all the really true fans, the ones who run websites based on the Transformers universe, and talk to them guys and see if they can come up with something that gels better than, a writer he's used 3 times previously and produced 3 very bad movies from.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of instances of somebody new to a franchise or a fandom coming in and writing something immediately, like Nicholas Meyer springs to mind on Star Trek 2, on Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan, who gave a massive shot in the arm. But this guy, who's obviously written 3 other Transformers movies, which aren't that well regarded, come in and do a 4th one for us.
It's like when the recession all happened. Was it Larry Sanderson or whatever his name was when he got sacked, and then basically he just got taken on by the presidency again to redo the currency.
Yeah.
So, I think we can all agree, though, that Pearl Harbor is a mighty fine movie.
Where did that come from? Pearl Harbor. Shoot yourself in the face for saying that comment.
That will move you to tears. It certainly moved me to.
It moved me to tears as well. I wanted to switch the fucker off.
I would like to make it clear. You see, I was willing for a moment there. I thought I was just going to let that joke lie and be like, I'll play out and just be like, let the audience think. And then I was like, what if people don't get the joke? And people, I don't really like Pearl Harbor, honest. So I think that wraps it up for us.
I can't believe that we've managed to talk bollocks for 50 minutes on not a specific subject. I think we've done quite well on that one.
Strange.
And there'll be another one next month with a very similar format. I think it's been a success, gentlemen. I'm Philip.
I'm Scott.
And I'm William Bell.
Live long and talk bollocks.